There are 8 stocks that I'm definitely going to be buying in June, and I want to share with you how I came up with them as a sort of former banker and show you my process. So I'm not just going to give you the stock names as I'm sitting here in the sunshine in London, which is a rare thing apparently, sunshine. They mostly have rain, I think. I think the English language has more words for rain than pretty much anything else. But let's get back to the stocks. The purpose is that these are 8 stocks that are high quality, that we could hold pretty much forever, and that are reasonably priced, and that will make us more and more money every single year, right? That's very much the premise here. So I'm going to walk you through them. I'm going to give you the data points so you can make better decisions. You can find this kind of data yourself, find these kind of stocks yourself. Of course, none of this is financial advice. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. Doesn't mean you should be doing it, but hopefully this is going to be insightful. So stock number 1 is Fortinet. Now, Fortinet is a cybersecurity company, and if you just think about all the massive computers being built, like Tesla's bought 30,000 NVIDIA GPUs or something, imagine how quickly that computer could hack your password, right? So cybersecurity is going to become a larger and larger issue. When you talk to JP Morgan, for example, I think they spend $1.5 billion now on cybersecurity. So it's a massive, massive business for every business out there, every bank, every utility, every infrastructure company, governments, and so on. So Fortinet is in an industry that's growing, and that's already that's a huge bonus, right? But let's look at their core numbers here. So cash flow is B, growth health is B, profit health is an A. Those are outstanding numbers. And then relative value, like how expensive is the thing, it's a D. So it's not massively expensive. It's nowhere near as expensive as it is bright here suddenly in London. The clouds have parted. The sky is blue. Who would have thought? Maybe it's because I'm sitting in front of a church. Do you think that's got to have something to do with it? It's a very nice church, actually. There we go. So essentially, you know what they do. They provide software, cybersecurity services, and they do that with a very, very good margin, 77% gross profit margin. They bring in about 5 billion profit and just over 5 billion revenue and just over $1 billion profit. So a pretty decent profit margin there, over 20%. And their profits have been growing at 14% a year, which is good, right? So I always look at the number like, what do I want to achieve with my portfolio? I want my portfolio to go up at least 14%, maybe a little bit more. And that's a good number to start from. And then if that were to compound every year, the following year, the 14% becomes 15%, it becomes 16, becomes 17, and so on. The compounding makes it bigger and bigger and bigger over time. So that's why you don't actually need a monstrously large number. You just need a number that's solidly in the double digits there. And if you look at their free cash flow, it's about $1.7 billion. What does that mean? Well, it means they're getting paid before they deliver the service. It means they don't have to dilute. They don't have to raise debt. It means you're kind of protected as a shareholder. They can invest without burning through your money. And currently, it's trading at a 35 times earnings multiple, which might seem insanely expensive, but the beauty is that good companies forgive you for paying too much. How does that work? Well, the P is price, right? The P stays fixed, and the E is profit, the earnings, and the earnings keep going up every year, and therefore this PE multiple becomes lower and lower. So if you were to buy the stock right now and you would hold it for 10 years, then by the end of the 10 years, your 35 times PE becomes an 8 times PE, which seems insanely cheap. So that's why I like buying good businesses. It's just way easier. You don't need to time it. You don't need to really worry about the price all that much. You just need to make sure it's actually a really, really good business. Okay, so stock number 2 is Choice Hotels. And that seems like an odd choice, doesn't it? But just look at their numbers and what stands out. The A in profit health. It's an insanely profitable business. That is, well, let's look at what they do in a second. But the relative value is also a D, which means it's not insanely expensive. Like an E or an F is more like, okay, let's worry about this. And what do? Well, they operate hotel franchises. Comfort Inn, you might have heard from, Quality, Sleep Inn, Ascend Hotel, Roadway Inn, basically all the miserable hotels that business travelers have to stay in if their employers are cheap. Radisson Blu, and all these places where you basically want to take your own life. It's just there isn't a hook strong enough on the ceiling to hang yourself with the curtain. In fact, they probably haven't got a curtain. They cheaped out on the fabric. So these are miserable hotels for wage slaves. That's basically what they are. And I'm very glad I never have to stay in one of those again. But is it a good business? Yeah. There are a lot of wage slaves. There are a lot of people who have corporate jobs with very, very mean employers, and therefore they have to stay in these miserable places. I've got some of my team in London this week, and what did we do? Well, we rented a 6-bedroom house with a gym and a steam room and a sauna and a garden and a... Why? Because we want to have fun. We want to enjoy life. We could cheapen out and put everybody into a Radisson, but what would that achieve? What is the purpose of making money? So I like to put people in good places. I also like to make sure that nobody ever works FaceTime. Right? Doesn't matter how long you're there for. What really matters is that you are there. But I digress. I make money out of companies that I don't like the product of. Philip Morris is another example. Just look at the gross profit margin on this thing. It's 90%. That's almost like MasterCard or something. It really is an extraordinary margin, really extraordinary. I mean, drug dealers are like, we cut this stuff with all sorts of fake materials. We still can't get to 90%. How does this hotel chain manage it? I know. And it's not a huge business, 740 million revenue, of which about a third is net profit. So it's very good, better than most software companies. And profits are growing 9% a year, return on invested capital going up 19% a year. So try explaining to me why this stock would not go up by somewhere in that zone, 9 to 19%. I find that quite hard to come up with. And obviously, as I keep saying, not financial advice, but yeah, it's a glorious business. They have free cash flow. It's very little really to complain about with these guys. It's just one of those businesses that's not sexy, it's boring as heck, but it keeps making money. I like it. Is it expensive? I don't think so. Trading at an 18 times price earnings multiple. And again, it's going to keep growing. If you hold on to this thing, you're going to be in the single digits with your PE multiple, as my hair flies here in the wind. So much like the Cocker Spaniel that's sitting next to me. He's actually very cute. His ears are even larger and longer than my hair. So there is business number 2. Business number 3 is probably one you heard of. It's a slightly obscure tech company that apparently make phones and other devices. It's called Apple. And they have customers who are willing to sleep outside in the rain and the tent when they launch a product, which tells you that they probably have a pretty good product that people actually really, really want. So let's look at their score grades. Growth health, C. Profit health, A, yes. And cash flow, C, relative value, D. So again, not very, very expensive considering how good a business this is. And yes, they haven't innovated all that much of late. They're going to come out, apparently, the great big innovation of Tim Cook is a thinner phone. They're really reinventing the wheel, aren't they? They're really doing something groundbreaking. But you know what? People are going to buy it. People are going to buy that thinner phone and they're going to pay $1,500 for it, and they're going to stand in the rain to get it. So Apple has an amazing business. It has an amazing user base. Over 1 billion Apple phones are out there, and each one has an Apple shop on it, and you can sell them subscriptions. And so I like Apple. I think it's a great business. Okay, gross profit margin, not quite what the hotel chains do, the Radisson Blu miseries, but 45% gross profit margin for a manufacturer, that's pretty good. And I know Apple doesn't actually manufacture anything, they outsource it all, yeah, okay, but it's still a manufactured product that they sell. And here is the kicker. Their profit growth is 12% in the long run. Not that exciting, but still good. But their return on invested capital is 57%. So if they invest $1,000, the next year they will have generated $570 profit on that. And that is extraordinary. And that is so good. You want to do somersaults and think, how does the stock price not go up? I don't understand it. And I don't. So I like it a lot. Now, do they have cash? Do they have cash? They've got 100 billion in free cash flow a year. 100 billion. So no matter what happens here, they'll have an extra 100 billion next year. So they can invest, they can innovate, they can spend on R&D, they can acquire, they can do a lot of things, and they'll become a better and better business. So that cash flow is a moat. There's just so much cash gushing about. And is it expensive? 29 times PE? It's not cheap, but it is an extraordinary business with an extraordinary product and an insanely addicted customer base. So I like it a lot. All right then, next stock, Oddity Tech. It's a very odd business, but look at the numbers, look at the grades. An A for profit, a B for growth health, a B for cash flow, and a C for relative value. So it's not expensive. It's not expensive, but it's glorious. Now, what the heck do they do? Well, let me tell you, I'll read it out to you. They operate a consumer tech company that builds digital-first brands for the beauty and wellness industries and internationally. It serves consumers worldwide through AI-driven, they had to have the word AI in it, right? I bet you that wasn't there a few months ago. And they use data science, machine learning. They sell beauty, hair, and skin products under the Il Maquillage and Spoiled Child brands. In addition, it operates Oddity Labs, a biotech center which develops ingredients. It's headquartered in Tel Aviv. Now, I can't say that I've used Il Maquillage or Spoiled Child products on my translucent skin, but apparently people are. Otherwise, they would not have a 71% gross profit margin, and they wouldn't be bringing in about $500 million in revenue with a 32% return on capital and a 19% growth in profit margin. So it's an outlier. I haven't seen the business. I don't know the product very well, but the numbers, look at the numbers. Judge everything by numbers. And their free cash flow is 111 million. 500 million revenue, 100 million plus in free cash flow. It's a very well-run business. It's almost as if they're selling people subscriptions or something like that. Maybe they are. Maybe you get a spoiled child delivered every Monday or something like that. So I like it. I like it as a business. Trading at 22 times forward PE, but if they're going to keep growing in sort of high teens, 20% a year in 10 years, that'll be a 7x multiple. So you're going to get your shareholder yield. You're going to get your money's worth. I like it. Okay, next one. Paycom. What the heck is Paycom? Well, let's look at let's look at the school grades first. I always like to do that. Even if you don't know what the business is, look at the school grades. Growth health, A. Profit health, A. Do I need to say any more? I'm already in love. And what do? Well, they provide cloud-based human capital management solutions delivered as a software as a service for small to mid-sized companies in the United States. Kill me now, right? How boring does that sound? What do? Okay. HR, E-Verified, tax credit, candidate tracking, time and labor management, labor allocation. Oh my God, it sounds boring, doesn't it? It's like an HR, it's like some sort of digital HR SaaS business, which is, HR. I think if you work in HR, you have to lose the will to live, don't you? I used to hate dealing with HR, to ask the bastards for days off like they own me or something. Really can't stand the whole thing. I think we should just all close AI departments and let OpenAI handle the whole thing. Anyway, people seem to like the product. They have an 86% gross profit margin. And that means it's a good product. It means people are willing to overpay for it. It means people are willing to stick around. It means it's hard to replace. They bring in almost a 30% profit margin, 31% return on invested capital, and 10% profit growth. So pretty impressive stuff all around. Free cash flow is 288 million, which is not bad, on 1.7 billion revenue. So overall, again, a very, very impressive business. 23 times forward PE, not expensive. Again, if you have the patience to wait 10 years, you probably own it at 5 or 6 times PE. Here's another one. Here's one that I actually really like. I have to move out of the sun a little bit, otherwise my translucent skin will just turn into crimson and I look like a lobster that's been fried involuntarily. So what's the next one? The next one is Mettler Toledo. And Mettler Toledo is a scales business. And I actually saw a Mettler Toledo scale last week. Where was I? Yes, I was in Villefranche-sur-Mer, in the south of France, and I was buying vegetables and fruit at a market stand. And the nice lady there who was called Cristal, she had a large tattoo, which surprised me, and she had a Mettler Toledo scale, which all good green grocers have apparently, but not just green grocers, but every manufacturer, every pharmaceutical company, every business who cares to do something precise, laboratories and so on, use a Mettler Toledo scale. And therefore they have glorious cash flow, scores a B. They have very, very good profit, is an A, and it's a D for value. So for relative values, it's not super cheap, but it also isn't super expensive because it's just an insanely good business. And let me show you how insane. The gross profit margin is about 60%. 60%. That's pretty staggering for a manufacturer. And they bring in 12% profit growth a year, about 800 million in profit on about 3.8 billion in revenue. So pretty staggering numbers all around. And about $1 billion a year in free cash flow. So again, very, very, very well managed business. Really, really impressive stuff. Is it cheap? It's not expensive. It's not cheap. I'd say 37 times PE right now, but it's growing in sort of the teens. So it just gets cheaper and cheaper every year. If you look at their charts and their numbers, you'll see a little bit of a COVID blip there because obviously the world was spending an absolute fortune on anything pharmaceutical related, and that's one of the big sectors for them is pharmaceuticals customers. So they had a bit of a blip there. They went back down and now they're sort of going back up. So it's a stock I've had for quite a while and I like very much. And I think I'll keep liking. I can't really see them going out of business. Once you've fitted your factory or your laboratories out with this equipment, you have to have maintenance contracts. You have to keep them up to date and service contracts and so on. So it's a pretty solid one in my view. Now here's another one. Zoetis, Z-O-E-T-I-S. Before we look at what they do, just look at the school grades here. B for cash flow, B for growth, A for profit health, and D for relative value. So again, not super expensive, not super cheap, but what do they actually do? Well, let me read it out to you. They discover, develop, manufacture, and commercialize animal health medicine, vaccines, and diagnostic services in the US and internationally, and primarily for livestock, cattle, swine, poultry, fish, sheep, and others. And they're basically the people who provide the vaccines and the injections that all those poor creatures have to endure because they're crammed together in horrible conditions and they would all be developing all sorts of diseases. So they pump them full of antibiotics and all sorts of rubbish so that, you can pay less for your groceries. Now, you might have noticed I'm a vegetarian, so again, it's not a product that I would wish to purchase or wish to encourage, but it doesn't mean I don't want to buy the stock. You know what? It doesn't. I don't think they do much that's, they probably do some tests on I actually need to check that out. If they do animal tests, I'm always out. But yeah, basically they're a big antibiotic developer for animal health. So I'm not a fan. I'm kind of on the fence on this one, I must say. I'm very much on the fence on this one, but I want to get in on this. They're based in New Jersey, by the way. Profit margin is 70%. Gross profit margin. That's pretty extraordinary stuff. And return on invested capital is 22%. Profit growth a year, 10%. So it is a very, very good business. 8 billion in revenue, 1.7 billion in free cash flows. It's a very, very good business. It's just a question of, I'll have to look that up, how they develop those. They probably do animal testing. I can't bear that. Taking dogs, cats, monkeys and injecting with them things so that you can get your steak cheaper and with more antibiotics. I'm not really a fan. So I'll probably pass on this one. but you can see why it made the list from a numerical point of view. It is a very, very good business. Now here's another one that might trigger some ethical issues. McDonald's, the big egg McD. And the only thing I look at there is Profit Health. Profit Health is an A. It's extraordinarily profitable. I think you know what they do. Fries and shakes and, that kind of stuff. And they have a gross profit margin of 57%, which is pretty hard to do with they call it a restaurant. I think the term restaurant is used very, very loosely, particularly in the United States. I'm sorry if I sound like a snob, but something by the side of a motorway, it's very rarely a restaurant. Something that flips burgers is definitely not a restaurant. At least not the way McDonald's does it. So anyway, it's some sort of fast food chain, right? 25 billion revenue, 8.5 billion of that's profit. It's about 30%. Profits are growing at 7% a year. And out of the 25 billion, they have 7 billion free cash flow. It's almost as if you prepay for your fries on some sort of subscription. So it's a very, very well-run business. Obviously, it's a massive brand. People are willing to eat the stuff that's going to kill them because it's called McDonald's and it's full of all kind of flavors and weird substances that make you addicted. Is it expensive? 21 times PE. And even if they just keep growing in the low teens, in 10 years or 9 years, it'll be an 8 times PE, which means you'll get 12% shareholder value, a yield, and you hold it another 10 years, you probably get, 30, 40 times. So with these companies, it really is a question of how long can you hold them for? And do they get better or worse over time? So what I would do is if you were to buy any of these stocks, I'm not saying you should, write down these numbers, gross profit margin, write down return on invested capital and long-term profit growth. And then every quarter, they report only once every 3 months, write down the new number, have a notebook with it and keep it for 20 or 30 years. It'll be a nice momentum. You can show your children that this is how I made my money, right? Here are the numbers. I recorded them over 20 or 30 years. And if they get better, you hold it. You don't care whether the stock goes up or down or sideways or whatever. But if they get worse, you might want to consider exiting, right? Maybe not for 1 quarter, but if they're doing it consistently, or also if they get worse, what you can do is you can read or you can listen to the earnings report. And I wouldn't do it for every stock every quarter because it's tedious, but if there is a big change, you will find out why. And you get to listen to what investment bankers ask these companies, and it gives you a tremendous amount of insight. Now, if a 20, 30-year horizon is just too long for you, or you want to accelerate this, then you got to learn how you can make money from your money faster. I'll teach it to you this coming Tuesday. Join me for a live trading training. It's completely live. I'll give you my 3-step system. You can be a beginner. You don't need to know anything. If you've already traded, I think you're going to get a tremendous amount of value out of it. I hold nothing back. We do some real trades together and it'll be fun. Sign up at felixfriends.org/training. I love you for watching. See you on the next one. I set out on a mission to find an industry and then companies and stocks that I could buy and hold forever.